Citizens, we interrupt your normally scheduled programming to bring you an emergency broadcast. This broadcast has been developed to both entertain and educate you in preparedness and survival skills. Please stay tuned. Your very life may depend on it.
And welcome back to another episode of your favorite Doomer, Boomer, and Gluten Free Survival Podcast. Welcome back, Miles. What in the heck have you been up to this week? Anything fun?
Hey, Joe. Well, this has been the last week in preparing for Static Monsters. So those that have been following our past episodes, that is a strongman competition. It's really cool. It's international. And I think that there's now 35 events globally, from Melbourne, Australia to London, England, to about 20 or so in the United States. Canada's got one, Germany's got one, and they're all streamed live on the Giants Live website. And it's a max deadlift and max log press event. So I finished up training Wednesday for that, and I've been just kind of carb loading and hydrating and getting as much rest as I can so that I can have a successful competition tomorrow. So with that in mind, I know you guys are expecting a whiskey of the week. We're going to do water of the week today because I never drink the night before a competition. So I've got right here, this is my 40-ounce hydro flask. Those of you that are watching on the Patreon can see that all of my politically incorrect stickers are just beat to hell. And that's from years of this being in the back of an armored vehicle or rolling around in a helicopter. It's got dents in it. I can't believe it still keeps my stuff cold. So let's go ahead and get some tasting notes. First of all, on the nose, we've got melted plastic from being in hot environments. Okay, let's have a sip. Okay, so we've got a little bit of charcoal, probably from the Brita water filter, and I think no, that was just something in my beard. That's it. It's water.
No hints of fluoride or chlorine.
Definitely none of that.
Good deal. Well, good luck on your competition, man. That's awesome. Sounds like you put in the work and are ready to roll.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm really excited for it. It's my first competition since my knee injury last fall. I spent the first couple of months of this year doing a really rehab intensive training block, focusing on squat variations and deadlift variations to just really re-strengthen not just my legs, but also the tendons around my knee that I injured. And then back in July, I really started heavily into training for this. So it's been a good, hard couple of months, but I'm really excited.
Cool. That sounds incredible. I look forward to hearing how you do. This is going to be cool. Yeah,
I think so too. How about you, Joe? How's your week been?
Crazy. You know, either life is flying by and you're holding on to the tail, just trying to keep up, or, you know, you're sitting in the saddle trying to control things. And, you know, you kind of get to make your choice of how you're going to look at things. I think more than anything, it's all perspective. So things have been kind of crazy. But I joined a gym, Miles. This is like the first time in 25 years that I showed up in a gym, actually membership and everything. So
wait a minute. So are we going to see Swole Joe?
No, you know what? You'll never see it until you get to come here. That stuff ain't ever showing up on Instagram. That's like not part of my game.
That's like, okay, but maybe for like our Patreons, like our top paying tier, we could have, like, you know, if a one-time donation of $100 and you will get a shirtless photograph of Joe and Miles.
Autographed?
We're both pretty pale. Autographed. We're pretty pale, so like I anticipate the flash to just reflect off of our chests, so you're not going to see much. No, I jest, but I'm quite happy to hear that, man. So is it like Is it like a Purple Planet gym or is it like a real gym?
No, it's like a Purple Planet gym.
Oh
So
no.
yeah, no, that's at this point, Miles. At before we moved here out to the new place, I would run every day, rain or shine, every day, early in the morning. I was out there putting in the miles. I hate running. I absolutely hate it. Every single week, I would tell myself, well, when you get to this milestone, you'll start to enjoy it. When you get here, oh, when the weather changes, and I would always give myself an excuse, a reason why I was going to start to enjoy running at some point. And it never happened. But I did it anyway because there's the mental thing that goes on when you're pushing your body, when you're exerting yourself, that you can't accomplish any other way. Plus, you get to stay in shape too. So I was running when we moved out where we're at now, Miles. It's so dark and there are predators out there and wild boars. And, one season comes with animals in the rut. You don't want to get, gored by some red stag that gets a little excited at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I set up I set up for the gym the next day. I was there. That meant shifting my routine up an hour. So I'm up at 3:30 every morning and have not missed a work day since. So just figuring out all these new machines and when you're getting back into it, Miles, just from your injury, but I'm even less. But you're at that point where you can't overexert yourself because you don't want to have to take that day off or that time off. So you're kind of trying to pace yourself a little bit, which isn't the easiest thing for me. But no, I think I've had a couple of good weeks here already with with the solid workouts in. I'm feeling good about it already, starting to kind of get into the little bit of that routine and how, I'm super routine oriented, where once I get a routine down, dude, it is hard for me to break back out of it. But that routine is like everything from the way things are packed up in the morning to the way where things are placed in my truck. I'm that goofball like that. But all those little routines, all those little parts of the puzzle help me keep the momentum going in the direction that I want it to go. So still working on some of that stuff, but like I said, it's been 2 weeks now since the day I started. I have not missed a work day, and we'll see where it goes. But I'm definitely seeing the benefits of it already, and I'm definitely seeing where over the next couple months it'll change a lot.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that, man. And to you and to anyone else listening, I say that totally in jest about the Planet Fitness. The reality is very few people are as insane as I am. And any level of physical activity, when coupled with discipline and a good nutrition plan, is only going to add time and quality to your life. And it doesn't take a lot. I mean, just some active stretching, a little bit of cardio, and a push day, a pull day, and a leg day. So push, bench press or overhead press, dumbbells, barbell, whatever you want. Pull, you do some deadlift variations or some rowing movements, and then legs, squats, barbell, Smith machine, whatever you have access to, dumbbells. And you will absolutely start feeling better. Your pain will improve if you have chronic pain in your joints, not nips, hips and knees. And I said nips. Hips, knees, shoulders, back, believe it or not, will improve with resistance training. So that's pretty awesome, man. I'm really happy to hear that you are getting active again and taking control of that in your life. That's pretty badass.
Yeah, got to do it. It's one of those things where, like I said, you get into routine for a little while doing one thing and, a lot of at home stuff. And I figured, you know what, I need to separate what I'm doing at home from what I'm doing and put that kind of in its own category, in its own place, and say, nope, enough of that, enough kind of making excuses or not going all the way in. So boom, let's do it. Let's get it done. I mean,
And I think that's a really good point you just brought up. So I have a home gym. I have a power rack. I have Texas power bar, deadlift bar, squat bar, everything I need at home to train. but I still regularly go to the gym. And a big part of that is that discipline of I'm setting this time aside. My responsibilities are taken care of. My kids are handled. My bills are handled. My household responsibilities are handled. I'm taking an hour for me, an hour to focus on my fitness, my wellness. And even if you don't have to have a home gym. Let's say you have like a treadmill and some kettlebells at home. It's still important to get out, do something different, expose yourself to different people, be in a different environment, and in a distraction-free place where you're really going to be able to hammer down and succeed in that training program.
Yeah, and I got that. We'll be doing another 12-hour walk coming up here in the beginning of December. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll be in better shape for that than I've ever been, for sure, by going to the gym here and ready to knock that out. But again, for a lot of people, they're worried about the physical aspect of it. Well, where I'm looking at the same time, Miles, it's also the mental aspect of it. It's the discipline of getting up, or the discipline of getting out, the discipline of stopping on the way home, however it fits into your schedule the best. But it's the mental part of it that I think is also probably just as beneficial, if not more beneficial, than the physical part of it. It's the mental benefits that you get from setting that time apart. It's the mental benefits that you get from being consistent on something that you know is good for yourself. It's the mental discipline and the mental benefits of exerting your body and pushing yourself and doing something you don't want to do. So I always seem to go back to the mindset part of things, because I think that that's super important. And this is one way to strengthen yourself and to add grit to yourself and to your life, is by getting outside of your comfort zone, or getting outside of what you normally do and stretching yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you're listening, if you have some home gym equipment, whether it's a Bowflex or a power gym in your garage like I do, listen, there's something to be said for forcing yourself to go and do something. It's definitely easy on days you get a little depressed or a little bit too tired, didn't drink enough water yesterday. Oh, I'll just lay in bed for another hour. I'll get to my workout after work. No, you won't.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I'd like to add one more thing from a male perspective. Women too will benefit from this, but fellowship. I mean, I look forward to going to my gym because there are world-class strength athletes that train at my gym, and I've become friends with a lot of them. And it's really cool to hang out with them and kind of bullshit a little bit between sets. If you're into powerlifting or strongman, the reality is, you'll spend 5 minutes doing a single heavy rep, and then you'll BS for 20 minutes until your next set. But it's important building those friendships, mentoring each other. They teach me a lot of things. I offer them some things as well, and it's a really cool environment that you just can't get in your garage with a Bluetooth speaker playing Metallica. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep, for sure. For sure. So in this episode, Miles, we're going to talk about some preparedness websites and apps that we both use. You kind of jumped into it from taking on some websites that you think are beneficial. I jumped into the app aspect of it, and kind of some of the apps that most of us, or a lot of us probably, kind of already have on our phones, and how to maybe use them differently, or how to look at them a little bit differently, maybe how to leverage them. So why don't you jump into your websites and your list, Miles?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's going to be maybe some crossover, or at least some like similar thought processes. So I chose primarily websites for a lot of reasons. Joe, you and I are similar in age, and both of us kind of grew up in that era before the smartphone. And as the internet was in its infancy and then began to grow, and then, me personally, I really kind of had my like awakening as a prepper around like 2006, 2007. So a lot of that was internet driven. Of course, you waded through all kinds of like bullshit forum posts and fake news crap, and people still riding the high from Y2K. But over time, I found some really good websites. So I kind of narrowed it down into communications resources, I narrowed it down into a weather app or weather website, as well as a news crawler. I don't know what you want to call it, and a blog that's just fantastic. So we'll start at probably the most boring. So wildfiremap.org. It's a great website. They also have an app. So a lot of these do actually now have associated apps on their phones. But this allows you to track in real time wildfires. It also, I believe, has hurricanes, earthquakes, and all kinds of other important resources. So this is probably a little bit more geared towards those of us that do live in areas where wildfires are more prone. Living up north, I had to have a go bag ready for myself and my kids because there were almost always fires out in Williams or out in Baghdad, not Baghdad, Iraq, Baghdad, Arizona. Yeah, there's a Baghdad in Kentucky as well, apparently. And they're all shitty little towns. But no, it's a great resource. You can kind of track wildfires. You can do email alerts or app alerts if you are in an area prone to wildfires and maybe radio isn't working or you've lost power, but you can maybe still get onto your cell phone and hop onto 4G, 5G and see what's going on and if it's time to evacuate. So that's a really terrific resource, like I said, for wildfires, earthquakes, hurricanes, and other major disasters like that. I'm sure Joe will have something similar. We'll move here to news and blogs. So Joe and I were kind of talking before the show, and I had mentioned Drudge Report. So, a lot of us that have been into preparedness and tend to be a little bit more conservative leaning or libertarian leaning, certainly at one point used to really consider Drudge Report to be a pretty balanced source of news, but it has now since become just an absolute liberal dung heap. So there's a couple of good resources out there. The first one I'm going to mention is Zero Hedge. And it's kind of the same idea. It just pulls important headlines, politics, war, economics. It's a really good, just like if you've got 10 minutes while you're taking a dump and you just want to get a pulse on what's going on in the world, it's a great resource to have. And sort of along those lines, I've also got Forward Observer from Sam Culper, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are also familiar with the old Forward Observer podcast that then became Out Front and is now more been pushed towards YouTube. And he also has a paid email service subscription, and I really recommend it. When I signed up, it was $100 a year, and I just talked to a couple of the guys in my mutual assistance group, and we all kind of chipped in. And we have like a weekly meeting, and we just kind of discuss the big highlights. His is a lot more in depth than Zero Hedge. Definitely not something you can handle during a single bowel movement. Maybe if you're eating a lot like I am and have irritable bowel syndrome, it'd be a good resource for you. But it's a little bit more to digest. It's very in depth, and as we all know, Sam is has a brilliant mind for this type of thing, and a really great way of painting these pictures and giving you this information and showing you, hey, here's news article A, B, and C. Here's why they're important on their own, but hey, what happens when we put them together and take a look at what's going on in Europe that also has to do something with this? This is where this might be headed. So that is, instead of like an acute pulse on things like Zero Hedge is, this is more like from a medical standpoint, like long-term monitoring on what's going on. So definitely recommended. It's not free, so it's only $100 for a year. So to me, that's worth it. We all have different financial circumstances. You can kind of do what I did and kind of spread the burden between your preparedness group. Most of us have just ended up getting our own subscriptions anyway because it's such a great resource. And then the last one for news, before I move on to my last one, this is survivalblog.com. So, excuse me, I had mentioned that like a lot of us, I kind of got introduced into preparing in that like post 9/11 world. Not 9/11, post Y2K world. And a lot of websites were around back then, and survival blogs been around since 2005. And on top of having news about just regular survival related news, same thing as Zero Hedge talks about things in the economy, things going on with terrorism, violence, and war around the world. There's also just tons of other really cool resources on here. There's like canning recipes. There's historical perspectives that you can, today in history, October 27th, 1958 was President Teddy Roosevelt's birthday, and it's got like a little blurb about Teddy Roosevelt. That was, of course, yesterday. But again, so it's got a little bit of everything. It's got some history. It's got some acute preparedness-oriented news. It's also got resources. It's got recipes. It's got a lot of free downloads. It's got Excel spreadsheets that you can use to like catalog your food storage, your ammunition, whatever you have on hand. It's got really good resources to help you kind of build up your preparedness and kind of find out where you've got holes. Kind of along the line of that one, I'm going to cheat and do a sixth here. So the next one is actually going to be my website, archangeldynamics.com. So, of course, on top of medical and survival supplies, training, and everything else that I offer over there, I also have a blog that I fairly regularly update, and it focuses predominantly on medical topics. And those that don't know my background, I'm a paramedic, and there's a lot more to that, but go listen to episode 1 if you want the full CV resume there. But it's a really good source for medical specific preparedness items. I do a lot of like medical myth busting on there. I review stuff, so it's kind of a cool resource. I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit. But the last website I want to point you guys to, this has an app as well. It's a free resource. This is called Pulse Point, pulsepoint.com, and there's an app in the Apple and Google stores. And not everywhere has this. And what Pulse Point is, it's an app and website that have joined up with local fire and EMS agencies across the country. And just to show you, like down here in Tucson Fire participates and Rural Metro participates, but a lot of the outlying departments don't. And when I lived up in Prescott, none of them were on Pulse Point either, but it's growing through the years. So you got to be kind of careful with it, because if you don't tweak your settings, you're going to get notifications every 72 seconds if you live in a larger city. But I have mine set up to give me real-time alerts for major accidents. So that's anytime there's a fatality or more than just a single ambulance and fire engine responding. So like a first alarm medical where you're getting an entire battalion response, that's going to cause a lot of traffic delay in the area. So it's kind of nice to get those alerts. The second one that I have are for major fires, like industrial fires and confirmed structure fires. Kind of for the same reason. You want to protect your lungs, protect your eyesight, stay out of traffic, stay out of dangerous areas. For right now, it's just kind of nice for the day-to-day commute. In a preparedness scenario, it'd be kind of nice to know what's going on with that. And the last alert that I have set up is for hazmat or hazardous materials incidents. And everyone always thinks of hazmat as like a spill of a dangerous chemical or like, something ridiculous and crazy. The majority of the time, a hazmat incident is like a natural gas leak or a tanker that dumped oil on the road. Still important to know about that stuff. But yeah, it's more that scary doom and gloom stuff. I know we said we're doomer and boomer free, but this is one time you do want to be aware of those things. If that hazmat alert goes off and it says that it's a chemical spill and you're in the area, that's going to give you a lot more heads up because it's tied to the dispatch center than, say, the radio will. And if you need to shelter in place or, close your windows, it's important to know that. And there's a lot of similar stuff out there. Broadcastify is another really good resource. That's a little bit more diverse. That has fire, EMS, police, rail, and aviation radio. And you can just click your state, your city, your department, and listen live. So another good resource that's sort of along the same line. It just doesn't give you live updates on your phone like Pulse Point does.
So no, great suggestions, Miles. I like it. Actually adds some versatility to it, that the stuff that you suggested is both on the website and has apps, because it depends on what you're doing. I like options. Everybody who's going to listen to me on this podcast or knows me realizes I'm always about options. I'm always about different ways of doing things, because you never know where you're at. You never know what your reception is like. You never know how you can find something, or if your phone's dead and you're grabbing your wife's and be able to find a website versus, trying to download an app onto her phone when she doesn't have any space left on it, which seems like always. So I like that, Miles. What I wanted to say about James Wesley Rawls, that website there is probably like the ultimate website that there could ever possibly be on preparedness and survival type topics. I mean,
it's a library, my man. I mean, It's got everything.
It is deep in like every area, whether you're looking to, oftentimes we've talked about it with, all the different types of knowledge that's lost, Miles, just lost, whether it be cooking or gardening or animal husbandry or surviving, all that kind of stuff that's just lost. And they've done an excellent job there through offering rewards to people that write in. You get all sorts of different people from all sorts of different backgrounds doing all sorts of different things with their lives, sending in and writing amazing articles about different things. I mean, it is truly overwhelming. And it was Mr. Rawls and his book Patriots that got me started down this road of even thinking about preparedness. I worked with this crazy Y2K dude, and he would preach and constantly be talking every single day about his crazy man conspiracy theories, and just go on and on and on, Miles, every day to anybody that would listen, and really hardly anybody to listen, right? Well, one day at some point along the way, I got to thinking, you know what? What if this guy does have something to offer? Because he's awful passionate about it. I mean, he's crazy passionate about it. This is all the stuff that he talks about is, he was exactly the boomer doomer dude that I'm saying this is not about. And, I bought another crate of this, or I bought another pallet of MREs. I bought another, 1,000 rounds of 9mm, and I bought another 1,000 rounds of 5.56, and I bought another this, and I bought another that, and just going on and on. He was always, and everybody just would like look at him and they would kind of snicker. One day he started mentioning about this book that I needed to check out, this book that I needed to check out. And I had just kind of in my life started switching to, rather than listening to sports radio every single day on my long commutes home, started listening to audiobooks. So that was one of the first books that I ever listened to that kind of switched my head into thinking about preparedness and the possibilities and, how important it could possibly be to look at tomorrow and what tomorrow might bring. My kids were really young at that point, so it was kind of another thing where, look, this is a responsibility I got to take seriously to take care of my kids. Started getting the wheels rolling. So James Wesley Rawls and his book Patriots will always have like a little special spot in my heart, Miles, because they got me rolling in this direction and looking at life just a little bit differently. So that, if you are going to go to that website, make sure that you have some time on your hands and make sure you are kind of in a good spot mentally, because if you're not ready for all that you're going to find there, Miles is showing me something on his cell phone, but I can't see because it's kind of blurry.
I'm trying the stupid blur filter here, but that is, there we go.
Oh, there you go. See?
Patriots right there.
On Audible.
And I have it on paperback too.
I do too.
And I actually tracked down a first edition on eBay, and I love it. It's like in a plain white cover, and A little bit of the like intro part of the story has changed, but not much else is. The folks, it's a very entertaining book. It tells as so many books in the early 2000s in the prepper world were about. It was about an economic collapse. I'm not going to say anything else because it's well worth reading it or listening to it. But I mean, I read through it when I read through it. I read through it in 2 days. I couldn't put the book down, and on top of being a good story, it it was a great resource. The back of the book had like websites to buy stuff, and it had all throughout the book. It had hidden in the story like step-by-step guides to handle things. There's a scene in there where one of the guy's girlfriends gets shot in the shoulder with a 357, and as a paramedic with a lot of very advanced training from the military, the way that they described managing that gunshot wound and debriding the wound and tying off bleeding arteries, it was pretty spot on. So, I'm not going to say practice medicine without a license after you read that book, but just to show you, he put a lot of time and effort. He actually thanks all the people that helped him. There's a lot of good stuff in there on like ham radio. He names the people that helped him with that. This was not just some BS project somebody did. It was a really well-researched and very entertaining.
And again, I'm going to caution anybody who does read it as a good story. Read it as an opportunity to learn a thing or two, because it will drag you into the boomer, doomer, gloomer.
100%. 100%.
Preparedness completely and totally. And this is part of the reason why Miles and I are so like preaching against the fear, because it will be one of those books that will get you clicking Amazon out of fear and buying things out of fear rather than trying to understand things and learn where your strengths and weaknesses are and what you really need to do. It'll suck you into that vortex of boomer and doomer. So it is an awesome resource. I think it's excellent and something that you need to have in your back pocket. But at the same time, this ain't about fear. Fear will get us
definitely
nowhere. This is all about what we can learn and how we can learn from other people's knowledge and use it that way as a tool.
And I was kind of introduced to it the same way, the weird guy at work. And I just started reading it and was actually really enjoying the story. Yeah. And like I said, it really wasn't until about a third of the way into it that I was like, oh, I get it now. But I at the time I was already sort of like in my preparedness awakening. So instead I looked at it as like, well, where's some stuff I can learn? And like I said, the stuff in there on like small unit tactics and on radio communication are just phenomenal. It's got some really like creative ways to think about off-grid communications. It's got some very creative ways to think about command and signal when it comes to like reconnaissance patrolling and ambushing and things like that. So Joe's right. You have to have the right mindset, because it definitely, it kind of shocked me when I first read it. It definitely gave me that like, oh boy, I'm but then I realized again, okay, hold on. What can we learn from this? What can we piece out of this? What can we kind of de-escalate in our heads?
Yeah, it's one of those things where
still worth reading.
Yeah, you got to look at it and learn from it what you can take from it, because the reality is the guy's got a perfect setup. He's got all the right equipment to deal with everything. He's got who knows? I mean, it would be interesting to read through that book and calculate up how much money would be spent to put yourself in that position that he's in, with the multi-acre location, perfect location, and the amount of money that was spent on foods and the amount of money that was spent on all of these different things. And it would be out of reach for almost everybody. But it's starting somewhere and not getting overwhelmed by a book or a resource like that of people who've been playing this game for a very, very long time.
The one thing that I really took from that book was the concept of the MAG, the Mutual Assistance Group.
Yep.
Because again, I discovered it fairly early into my like preparedness awakening. And as we all know, especially in the early 2000s, top 10 items for your bug out bag. Okay. And we convince ourselves that we're this lone wolf and, oh, I've got, 3 Mountain House meals and a 28-in-1 hatchet shovel butt wiper combo on Amazon. I'm good. But the cool thing about that story, I said the biggest lesson I learned from that was the importance of the group.
Yeah.
And it actually has some if you're going to take anything from the book, it's that.
Yeah.
Learn how to set up a mutual assistance group. And it has some very clever ways to do it.
Yeah. And I'll second what he's saying about Ford Observer. I used to listen to that podcast regularly. He does a great job of taking all the news that's kind of aggregated and translating it and converting it into intel. I mean, that's what he did in the military. He was an intel officer of some sort in some way. He would take all the information, put it together, and make it so that it would be easily understood by the people on the ground. Whether it was accurate or not, that's always up for debate, right, Miles?
Yeah, totally. I have found through the years that some of it's speculative, and he has a background in military intelligence, so he's trained to think that way. Yeah. He's trained to look at, a table of information and compile it and come up with a series of outcomes. So he's not, always right. No one's always right. But again, the way that man thinks and analyzes and presents information is very unique in and of itself.
Yeah, he does a great job of making things understandable kind of to everybody. And I think that's it's one thing to be able to translate what you're reading and translate the knowledge. It's another thing to be able to put it to communicate it in a way that's easy to understand for people. So I'll jump in with my apps. And like I said, I think it's so easy to get weighed down, Miles. And that's why I think it's a good idea that you presented your stuff as websites. It's so easy to get bogged down and overladen with all of these things that you need to check on a daily basis or an hourly basis. That's why it's good you got stuff with it has an different alerts, and you can set up the alerts that are good for you so that when something important does come across, boom, it hits you. It's local. It actually is affecting you, because we all know that our phones can also become a gigantic distraction in our lives and really keep us from a lot of the things that are more important than anything else. So if you can set up alerts like you're talking about on some of these apps, that's the way to go. Now you're only looking if stuff is truly important to you, and you've set up what's important to you in advance, instead of every single time your phone beeps or buzzes, you got to be pulling it out of your pocket and, checking out who's got the latest tweet or who just posted on Instagram or whatever kind of, craziness you got going on. So my stuff is simple. It's probably already on your phone already in one sort or another, but I got mine broken down into a few different categories. I got mine broken down into entertainment, planning, security, and communications. So for weather, I just switched over and started using this Weather Underground app, and it will go deep into your local weather and what's going on. You can set it up so that they can find you locally exactly where you are. There's a great podcast episode on the art of manliness, and the whole episode is about local weather. And it's very interesting because a lot of people complain about, the accuracy of the weather and the weatherman, and he's trying to give accurate weather descriptions of vast areas, where in the past, historically, people knew their farm or their village. They knew where they were at and could tell just by watching the clouds or watching the temperature drop or different things, had a pretty good idea of what was going to happen right there on their plot of land, on their homestead or wherever they were at. And we've kind of lost that through the years by relying on this. So the more local I think that you can get with your weather of really what's going on. So I follow that. Another app that I use for weather is a lightning app to find out where lightning is, and you can dial that in so that the alert will let you know how close the lightning is. It's important I'm in construction, so lightning is really important to us for getting people off of the job or shutting down certain equipment because of lightning. But it's also should be important to you if you got kids out there playing on the soccer field or out on the football field and stuff. Do know what's going on, or you're on a family picnic or out on a hike, to know there was one afternoon where it was probably 100 degrees. The sun had been shining all day long, and all of a sudden I got an alert for lightning about 5 miles away, and I was shocked because was not in the forecast. There was nothing was supposed to change with the weather all day. Sure enough, within the next half hour, a big thunderstorm rolled in and really caught everybody by surprise because it was so sudden. So if you can help yourself out by tracking lightning, is probably going to be your first indication that something's coming your way at the beginning of a front. It's a good way to track and kind of gauge where you're at, and how close the lightning is to you and how close the threats are to you. So find some way to track weather, take care of weather where you're at. Maps, like Miles was saying, maps or Waze do a good job now of helping divert you around traffic jams, whether that because cars broke down or there's accidents and stuff. I think that the more prepared we can be, we as human beings get stuck in our daily routines and our routes and just jump on the highway going the same way. We've all missed a turn because it's a Saturday and we never turn there during the week because that's part of our commute, and then we missed a turn off to go to the store that we're supposed to go to or something. If we at least check those apps before we leave, we can save ourselves a lot of headaches and maybe change our route to go someplace. For security, I have my security system all set up so that I get alerts on my phone. It's a great way for me to keep an eye on what's going on my property at any given time. It's important for me. Again, it's small, it's local, it's what's going on right here. And one day some stranger showed up. I get some cool videos every once in a while of some cool animals and stuff. But and I also get to check then with my son goes and lets the animals out every morning when he gets up. So, there's ways to keep an eye on what's going on in your life and what's important to you without having to constantly be over the top of things. So I think right now it's working out real well for me. Maybe we'll play around with and do an episode about how I kind of got things set up a little bit vaguely in the future, just because it's a relatively cheap system that I got set up. But for me right now, I'm really, really happy with it. And the other I got under security and comms for apps on my phone is for my drone. And this is something that I'm playing around with because I really believe that drones could be a phenomenal preparedness tool that's really underutilized and something that people aren't really talking about a lot. But I think for scouting ahead or for keeping an eye keeping an eye on your area where you have limited people or limited manpower, or keeping an eye on threats that are possibly coming your way, whether it be a river, and what's that's looking like at the time, or we got flooding conditions or fires or different things like that. I think that's a tool that can really be utilized that we're not looking at right now. That's something that we can leverage. On here, I got hotels.com. Again, we talked about in past episodes about bugging out and whether you stay or go or having to leave because of forest fires and things like that. In fact, I think the next episode we're going to do, Miles, is going to be about should I stay or should I go? And I think hotels.com can be another tool that you can have your favorite hotel set up in, so that the moment you need to leave, boom, you can book your hotel room right like that. You got your credit cards set up in there. You got your favorite local hotels set up in there. And it's a matter of seconds, not trying to make phone calls when everybody else is trying to call the hotel or trying to book stuff. and it's easy. For $5 more, you can always cancel. So if there's a potential for something coming your way with hurricanes or things like that might be diverted, go ahead and book that hotel room in a better place. And whether you stay or whether you go, you can always cancel. And if you lose $5 or $10, it very well might be the best $5 or $10 you ever spent in your life.
And, kind of another added benefit to that, Joe, is that, when you've got your hotels.com all ready to go and you're booking that, if you do have to evacuate to the Marriott, you're going to get your Marriott rewards points. So it's like a win-win.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what more could you possibly want? You're bugging out because the world is about to end, but yet you're saving up for your Hawaii vacation.
I got to tell you, man, I never would have considered hotels.com. That is a really clever recommendation.
Simple. And then for entertainment, I got Pocket Cast. I've been using for a long time for my podcast as a podcast aggregator. I don't know that it's any better than any of the rest at this point. At the time that I bought it, I thought the best, and I've been using it for probably 10 or more years. And they are still updating that thing regularly. So I like that a lot. Pocket Cast and Audible. At this point, I think we have over 500 books in our Audible library. Between me and my kids, we're always adding to it. If you want to play the game with Audible, and you can get, in for a couple months for free at some points, and then you can get discounts for certain months when you rejoin and stuff, you can really, and if you work with the, what was I going to say? Oh, deals of the day and things like that. You can, and their sales and stuff, you can really build up a good library that's good for you and your family. Because face it, if you are bugging out because you're leaving because of a hurricane and you're sitting in traffic for hours with everybody else trying to leave town, or you got a fire that's headed your way, and maybe even you end up at a hotel, but the hotel has no power. You're safe, but the power's out because of a bad storm or tornado or something like that. Having the ability to entertain the people in your family, having the ability to change what could be a total negative into some partly enjoyable as you listen to a story and you work with one another. I think that's why, like in my preparedness stuff, I always have candy, and I always have games, and I always have packages of crayons and notebooks and things like that, because the more you can get your mind off of the negative path that it's going down, I think the better off everybody is. My kids always talk about all the candy in the preparedness storage, because after Halloween we'll stock up on that stuff, and they're always talking about, oh, Dad, you got all that Laffy Taffy in there. I hope something bad happens so we can break that open. It's like, no, you don't. We get some Laffy Taffy next time we go to the store. But it's that idea of having something in there that makes people feel a little bit better, and that's those little things go a lot further than sometimes we want to admit. So for me, entertainment's big, and it's easy. It's easy entertainment. For comms, I'm not opposed to just using my regular text messaging app. A lot of times during storms or when bad things are going on, it's real hard to get phone calls through. Internet is spotty, but SMS usually seems to be the one more reliable way to communicate with loved ones. So definitely everybody's got SMS on their phone. If you want to knock it up a notch, some people that I communicate with will only communicate through Signal, because Signal, what do they call it? They make it so that nobody else can read your stuff.
End-to-end encrypted. Yeah.
You got it. Exactly. Encrypted. So it's another possibility. Again, I've been using it for a long time because, like I said, I got certain people in my life that's all they'll use. And I've never had a problem with it. Never had it not go through. Never had any issues whatsoever. So if you want to be a little bit more secure in your comms, that may be an excellent option for you. And then just using your phone the last thing we think about doing it for is as a phone. to call people. So, and then the other thing I got in here is using your phone and leveraging your phone as a tool to document what's going on around you. A lot of times we forget about just kind of documenting things. Something suspicious is happening. It's easy to click a picture of that truck that just drove by that was driving by real slow. Now you got their license plate, you got a make and model on the vehicle, you got a rough idea of the year. If somebody down the road complains that, hey, my house got broke into or this happened, hey, was it a white, F-150? Did it look like this? Yeah, that might actually be the truck. Okay, well, now you've got it completely documented. Accidents, suspicious behavior, super quick, very easy way to document what you have going on at any given time. And so think about it, guys. As you're flipping through your phone and you're looking at the apps that you have on there and trying to figure out what you're going to delete or what you're going to add, think about how you can leverage the stuff that you have on there already. I don't think I'm always going to be about taking away rather than adding, really, in anything in life. I think that the more basic, the more simplified that we can do things, the better off we're going to be. I think that it's so easy to get overloaded and just keep on adding more and more and more onto our lives. That's really just draining and taking more away than it's even worth.
Absolutely. I'll also add your phone as both a flashlight and a blunt impact tool as well. Yeah, a lot of really creative stuff in there. Like I said, hotels.com is something that I never would have considered in the realm of preparedness. That's a pretty dang good idea. I can't really think I would add too much. A scanner app, I mean, I kind of touched on that already. I do think that like a hardware scanner is your best option. An Uniden or Bearcat on Amazon or eBay is going to be sub $100, $150, and you can real time scan stuff. But you're not going to have that all the time. You're going to have this in your pocket. Yeah. So at home, maybe get the hardware scanner, but something on your phone is a great resource. And then drones. I want to be very cautious with how I word this. I want to make it very clear that I am in no way calling for violence or telling you to weaponize your drone or break any laws. I assure you the ATF will happily shoot your dog, okay? But look at what they're doing in Ukraine with drones right now. There's a pretty cool YouTube channel I like to watch. It's called I Did a Thing. And it's this kind of weird, like, hippie Australian guy, and he does, like, fun engineering projects. Like, he made a Beyblade out of a 10-foot wide saw blade and just demolished a living room with it. But he also made these like steel darts and attached them to the bottom of his drone and like put targets on the ground, because he's like, there's no way that this is real. They're putting hand grenades on drones and dropping them into tanks in Ukraine. Sure enough, he was able to, within a couple of feet of accuracy, drop these darts. So you're right. I mean, drones, on top of being a tool for situational awareness, may have other uses. And certainly making sure any of these apps are always up to date, making sure that you're testing them regularly, especially with like a drone app or something. You want to make sure that you're able to sync to your drone. Don't buy the drone and put it in a Pelican box and never mess with it, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Only other thing I would add is just a Bible on the phone, man. Yeah. I mean, same thing. I can appreciate a hardcover Bible. We all have them in our home. But if you're running out of the house and this is all you got, on top of having podcasts and audiobooks, having the Word of God in your pocket's pretty good too.
I'm not going to argue with that one, Miles.
All right. Well, I mean, that was a pretty fun show. We had kind of tongue in cheek mentioned it in our last podcast that we should do one of these, and I'm actually glad we did, because it brought back some fun memories of like our infancy as preppers and like the evolution we went through of, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, to, hey, what do we really need? Let's prune this down. Let's really make sure that we're mentally and physically fit and we're thinking things through logically. But again, it was a good review of some really great resources that, some of our listeners may have heard or may not have heard. If you are following us on Instagram, I would love to hear your guys' recommendations when Joe drops the episode update image on this, or maybe he'll take this little soundbite of me here talking and make it into a reel. Drop your recommendations below. What are your favorite apps for preparedness that either are like directly for preparedness or like Joe had, hotels.com, something totally out of left field I never would have considered? What are your favorite websites? We're always happy to learn from our listeners. We wanted to, when we started this show, and I wanted to really make it clear that listener feedback and interaction is something that really is the lifeblood of a podcast. So for sure, folks, give us your recommendations, give us your thoughts on this, and we will see you all next week. Where can they find you, Joe?
You can find me at Prepare.Defend.Lead on Instagram, and they can find the podcast at Zulu Alpha _actual. Where can they find you, Miles?
All right. So the website, archangeldynamics.com, for all of your medical and survival needs. Instagram, my business is Archangel Dynamics LLC. My personal page is _Snake Doctor. That's if you're interested in seeing what life as a strongman competitor looks like and how our training looks. You want to talk about, why conventional deadlift is far superior to sumo deadlift, and there is no other option. Sumo is cheating. Send me a DM. We'll chat about it. If you're looking for some advice on nutrition or on fitness programming, I can hook you up with that. If you're looking for advice on spiritual health and well-being and life coaching, Joe can hook you up with that. We got some really cool stuff coming in the next couple of months, guys. This is just the beginning of this podcast. So to those of you that are listening right now, you guys are like foundational members. That's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Like Miles said, we got some other stuff coming up along the way here. We want you guys to contribute, feel like you're part of what's going on. Don't be hiding in the shadows. Come out and contribute by sharing your voice and your opinions, either by DMing us on Instagram or by posting on there. Both of us are pretty open to listening and having conversations, especially with people, because we're all kind of coming from the same place, learning and sharing what we learn. So thanks for listening, and let's keep on moving forward here.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. I said, I believe our next podcast topic is should I stay or should I go? We're going to have to see if that guitar riff is royalty free. Maybe we can throw that into the intro just for fun. So yeah, folks, we'll see you next week. We got that topic and a lot more coming up and some big announcements coming in the future. So stick with us. Oh, well, that was fun.